Episode 23, we're solo. This whole crossing your leg thing.
It's hard, we gotta figure it out.
Figure something out. This is not okay though.
It's a little aggressive.
A little aggressive. So I guess I'll go back to the old standard. Brett Regan, David Brickley, episode 23. We go back to our solo edition.
Can I say congratulations? 23 episodes.
That is a big deal.
That's a lot.
But after we had Chris and Jack on the show, got a lot of knowledge. We can maybe break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I know you want to start with celebrating wins.
Yeah. Industry that we're in is ever changing. Clients come, clients go, but I think in general for any entrepreneur that you speak with, there are major peaks and valleys throughout your entire career, and when it's your company, it's your baby, I take everything very personally and probably overthink the negative. But as soon as there's a positive, I tend to, let's go on to the next thing, thing. And in a certain sense, you've really got to have that to be able to continue, because you can't pat yourself on the back too much or you'll go out of business. But trying to find ways to at least balance that out and celebrate the wins, understand that those are the peaks when the peaks are there, and those even out the valleys.
Well, are we ever going to get to that point, though? I feel like we've been saying that for 4 years.
But I mean, celebrating the wins to me doesn't mean like going out to dinner and popping bottles. It's more of just like
keeping things in perspective.
Just a recognition for me to say, okay, we had over the last month, there were 2 recaps or like lead-ins to new projects where we felt like it didn't go exactly how we wanted. We felt that for whatever reason, the client wasn't seeing the value in what we were providing, at least to the level that we want.
Right.
And shortly thereafter, we also closed several other deals, expanding relationships with other clients who very clearly saw more value and wanted to bring us on for more projects. Mm-hmm. And in the past, we've always had both of those things going on, but I think I've dwelled on the negative. And
so, yeah, to your point, if one client call comes back and says like, yeah, we're going to see, we may use you next year, we may not, that's going to stick in the front of your head, even though you had 8 great calls or you to close 4 brand new business.
Those stick out to me more. And,
which is good. And
it's important to, try and really get an understanding of why that happened, because that's valuable business insight.
And that's what my note on this was I think the good thing about us is once you hear something multiple times, we shift immediately. So we had 2 calls, like you said, we heard 2, like you said, not bad things, but 2 things that were similar in tone, and we're like, time to move.
Yeah.
So I think your clients can be your biggest advocates in terms of like when to shift and when, because what was valuable last year is not valuable this year, and maybe even what was valuable 3 months ago was not valuable right now. And we'll talk a little bit about Facebook and algorithm changes, but all it takes is for Instagram and Facebook to switch an algorithm, and all of a sudden your value changes unless you change as well.
Yeah, and I think, part of this topic can run as a thread through some of the other topics that we're talking about today on the show. But, determining when to shift gears and everything, you can't listen to every single piece of feedback from every single client, because then you're basing your business model not about what you think that you should be doing. It's more about that client's particular feedback. So it is nice when you feel like you understand the North Star. We discuss internally, we have a vision for where we want to go. And when you get some negative, feedback from that, it stings a little bit, but then on the other side, you're getting more positive. So just trying to make sure that those are balanced and recognize the positive when they come.
Well, I usually say, what's the one constant, right? So if someone came up to you and said, I think you're a jerk, like that may just be one outlier that has an opinion on you. But if you hear it 3 or 4 or 5 times, then it's no longer, as a light pops, it's no longer just one person saying something. It's becoming a trend, if you will. And I think if you don't appreciate hearing that, or you don't look at those seriously, then you may have a serious problem down the road.
Yep. So I think we've always tried to do an okay job with our staff after a big push to not just load everybody with a ton of work, and to really say, like, guys, it's going to be a little chill. It's going to be a little slow. I think on a few occasions we've let people leave early on Fridays and been pretty flexible with people that needed to, knock out personal stuff because it hasn't been so crazy and we know that it's going to spike up again. So I think from the employee standpoint, we try and find ways to let off the gas a little bit.
Well, I think even doing more team meetings weekly too, I think it even is beneficial to someone like you on the sales side, because you can be like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that we signed that client that we're working with in July or whatever. And that can, I guess, remind you, because if not, you're just thinking about that one bad call instead of potentially the new 4 gigs that you booked. So,
to anybody out there,
what's the solution?
Celebrate your win. Just a recognition, I think. And you could say this in personal life too. You could meet with, 15 different people on dates, and then one person like totally blows you off. And if you really focus in on that, then you're going to feel like a loser. And I think just overall in life, just really try to, when something went well, just give yourself a little bit of recognition that did a great job doing things right.
Glass half full.
I'm happy about that one particular thing, even if there's other negative things going in the background.
Cool. So moving on, and on the show today, we want to discuss business coaches and mentors. Is Facebook too powerful? When to decide to shift strategy in business? Of course, our quote of the week, but we'll move on to business coaches and mentors. And I feel like this is something that you and I really had an epiphany on probably in the last 3 to 4 months. I think we've talked on this show before about the power of peer groups, and even, talking out with Chris and Jack on the show here in episode 21 and 22. There was some things they said that were inspirational, some things that I think we learned, and I think anybody can learn from. But talking to somebody recently, I won't say his name or his company, but major guy that's made hundreds of millions of dollars, had multiple IPOs, and he said a pretty good thing, which I took to heart, was, as a business owner, you're at a strategic disadvantage if you don't have mentorship, because those people can really lead you and say, whoa, don't, what are you doing? Don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself type deal, and finding ways to fast forward and not make the same mistakes we talked about all the time. If we can go back to ourselves 4 years ago and tell us the procedures and the right things to do, I think it would be a whole different game. So trying to avoid pitfalls and avoid mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, being able to work closely with anybody that has more experience than you in a particular area is something that, if you're in a great company, not as an entrepreneur, but as a business person, you have a lot of those opportunities where an entrepreneur may not. So, I like to look at the careers of Jack Welch and Lee Iacocca and all these different people. And in a lot of cases, they were very closely aligned with people that had 25 years more experience.
So meaning if you're a sales manager, the VP of sales who's been there for 25 years becomes your mentor.
Totally.
Right?
So if you're inside of a large organization, there's multiple different opportunities, and in some cases, a large corporation will really promote that mentor-mentee relationship. But for certain, if you're wanting to get to this level, you would have easy access to be able to walk into somebody's office and say, I'd love to pick your brain. Or if you're even an assistant to somebody who's been there for 25 years, you'll learn so much through osmosis. As an entrepreneur, in most cases, you're on an island. So unless you find ways to align yourself with those people that you may have had in another life as a business person climbing a ladder in a large corporation, you have to seek out those opportunities. So I think right now with entrepreneur organization, which we're involved with and we talked about on the show before, you're with a group of peers. And some people are slightly higher levels and some people are at, similar levels than you, but no one in like my immediate group, I would say, like, I could go to them to have them be like, look, here's the roadmap, here's how to do it. Everybody's in a little bit in the same space.
Yeah, and I don't think it's even a mentor or a business coach necessarily won't give you the roadmap, like here's how you succeed or here's how you get 10x next year. But I mean, even with the peer group situation, people can say, whether it comes to trying to avoid lawsuits or trying to avoid employee issues or trying to avoid getting screwed on a business loan, all those things can be helpful so you don't go down the wrong path.
I agree. I think what's really great about the EO relationship is that we're all peers. So you can, express things, frustrations, and hear from other people and learn from other people. But I think the one thing that we are still missing was that mentorship, that business coach, somebody that we can really go to and say, like, we don't want to be with somebody who's on a similar playing field. We want to speak with somebody who's got a lot more experience.
It's kind of hard to explain, but you and I both, and we interviewed a lot of people, and we thought it may be like a CFO. We thought it might be a different type of, I guess, temp agency or something. But we both came to the realization that we want someone to be like, guys, what are you doing?
Right.
And that's like kind of hard to justify, but it really is. Like, you can look at someone's books, or you can look at maybe a new client we sign, like, why are you guys not going all in this area? You're insane if you don't. And that could still be a piece of advice that the mentor or the business coach is giving you, but at least it's a third party to look at something objectively and say, like, that seems like the diamond in the rough. Why aren't you going after it?
Yeah, and I think, most entrepreneurs are very, I guess, A-type in a certain sense, where they feel like they have a lot of the answers, which is why they struck out on their own in the first place.
And I think, for me anyway, I've been burned so many times relying on other people that you want to rely on as least amount of people possible for your ultimate success, which that's how it works. So I think people, even like me, may in the early stages say, well, let me just figure out a way I can do it so I don't have to put my eggs in different baskets.
But I mean, I think for us to be able to get to a point to say, we don't know what we don't know. We've got a great thing going here, but we're totally willing to admit that there's other people out there that could help our business more than we could do it independently.
Oh, yeah.
So to even get to that point, for me as a person who's very, like, I can figure it out, I can do it, and up until now, it has been the case.
Well, and I think, 4 years into the company, I think we finally got to a point where we're kind of getting our heads out of startup mode to take a step back, look at the company and say, we can really use some mentorship in this area. We can really use a business coach. Because 2 years ago, there's no way we're having this conversation. I know there wasn't.
Right. And I mean, if it's just between you and I floating around the ideas and deciding what to do, and then spending 6 months to a year to really kind of like learn the thing that we think we need to learn to get better in this area, but we wouldn't do that with any other part of our business. We wouldn't sit there and be like, you know what, we got to do motion design. We really got to just, you and I need to get on Skillshare and learn how to do it better. So I look at this as, something that Jack brought up, and I'll paraphrase the quote, but when I asked him about the early stages of his company, I said, you didn't have a lot of experience making soap, you didn't have a lot of experience doing any of this, how did you learn how to do it? And he said, this is the paraphrase, but I relied on a bunch of different people who had expertise in different areas, and I worked with all of them, and I learned that I could provide my own unique value in bringing all of them together. So the soap maker that he worked with probably wasn't selling as much soap prior to meeting Jack that he was after, because Jack was providing that unique value of a brand, a vision, a way to go to market.
And one other thing Jack said that I thought was good was he was going for venture capital money, I think, just like $50,000. And they started asking him, like, what's your P&L? What's your profit margin? What's your pre-tax margin? And he's like, what?
Well, I think
and he had none of that information, and it kind of taught him, like, I need to know all this information about my company. But again, how do you know to calculate your pre-tax profit margin if you don't even know what that means?
From my perspective, those are like the easy numbers. The hard numbers is like, what would you do with $50,000? You have to be like, put it in the bank and then spend it when I need it. Yeah. That's not a good answer.
Not a good answer.
So it's like, the bottom line accounting stuff is like, you can hire somebody for $25 an hour to do that really well, but it's the business coach that we spoke with that was like, you need to have a separate account over here. Mm-hmm. Every single time you do anything for your show, that needs to write a check over to here as a separate entity.
Yep.
And those are the kind of things where it's like, even just hearing him say that, I'm like, well, I can't do that.
Right.
So somebody else needs to.
And not so much like, yes, it is easy to like calculate your pre-tax profit margin, but I mean, ultimately, I think if you're just in the weeds a little bit, you know you need to make money, so you go sell a bunch of stuff, and then your bank account starts to go like this, and it's kind of like fluctuating. Oh, we're losing money, let's go sell more. But unless you actually get it down to an analytical like equation, you never really know A, what the goals are, and B, if you're actually doing better than you did last quarter. It's just like a thought, like, I think we made some good money on that project. Like, cool.
Yeah, or I think, something that's always been really challenging to even think, like, how would we know this is let's say that we just closed 10 of our biggest accounts, and every one of our accounts that we're working with right now wants to triple the type of business they're doing. How many people can we hire? I have no idea. So those are those business coach questions that are like, those are hard to answer, because I can go to any accountant on the planet who can be able to like do anything, and they won't be able to tell you that answer necessarily. You really need somebody that's done it before, that understands your business and can tell you from a place of, I've done it before and here's how I did it.
And one thing we've heard a couple times now, and I think the issue a lot of people have, is do you hire in front of sales and then go out and get it? Or do you go get the sales and then get the team? And we've heard a couple times now over the last couple months, like, if you're confident in your sales ability, go, get your people ready, get your troops and your soldiers on the front line, and then go sell it.
Yeah.
Which even that, it's like, well, I don't want to give salary to somebody for 2 months and they're just sitting there. So it's like, it's that analytical equation you constantly have to work out.
Yeah, and I think like a unique situation that we're in is 50-50. So if you feel one way and I feel the other way, if you get your way, I'm going to be like, I got burned. But if I got my way, then you would be getting burned.
Yeah.
So just to even have a third party, subjective, somebody that we both trust to be able to come in and say, you guys both feel this way, well, I feel this way too. At least then it's two to one. And it's a lot easier to say, all right, okay, because this person, not only is it 2 to 1, but this person I feel like has additional experience.
It's not just a gut feeling. It's like, I actually went through a similar situation. I hired 4 people. It was pretty slow for a couple of weeks, but then I signed somebody, and then we made triple that we've ever made before in our life, whatever the story may be. All right, so you wanted to talk about Facebook becoming too powerful. I think we may be on opposite ends of the spectrum here, but I know you're frustrated with the lack of information coming out of Facebook and the algorithm changes.
Yeah, so anybody that works in, social advertising or content knows that Facebook is really the way that you sell products now. If you're a new product coming to market, you're going to sell on Facebook through Facebook ads. And if you're a publisher, you're not just linking back to your website anymore. You're publishing directly to Facebook. That is a major part of your content strategy. So very small tweaks to the algorithm that Facebook is putting out there can have serious implications. And, an example here is, let's just say that we wanted to have, Nike sponsor this because we've got a book up here. We could say like, hey, we're averaging X number of views every single episode. And based on that, we can say that we'll continue shooting these episodes until you get X number of views. And that's how we're going to structure how we're selling our content to you. At any point in time, if Facebook changes and we drop from, let's just say, 100,000 views per episode down to 20,000 views, well, all of a sudden the value of this deal that we just got is completely blown up. Now, is that Facebook's problem? No, not necessarily, but the problem with it becomes that there's no warning, advanced warning. There's really no good communication tool to say, hey, we're making these changes, because I've heard from people that have product sales going directly through Facebook ads. Something changes one day and all of a sudden they go from 100% of what their quota was down to 30%, and it's really shifting the business landscape. I don't have a problem with that in a certain sense, but when you are determining what you think your user likes to see, it isn't based on actually what they're saying they like to see. It's based on what...
Not according to Facebook.
Even according to Facebook.
No, Facebook will say that they're basing it on what you like, what you interact with.
No, there's what they're saying is they're basing it what they think is best for the end user, which in turn really means what's best for them. But the static images on Facebook Live countdowns, the engagement on those have been astronomical. People love them.
I don't know if people love them. I think when you have something live for 48 hours and it's something like BuzzFeed, it's going to get a lot of eyeballs.
But I mean, it's not just eyeballs. These are interactions. This is engagement with that particular post. These are comments. Like, it's not just views, it's engagement. So in the article that was released, basically it said Facebook, recognizes that these are performing very well. But
They think
we're
you're
gonna
hacking it.
we're gonna tone that down because we don't like that you're doing that. We don't like that you're reaching out to this audience because that's not the way that we want them to interact with your content. That's a lot different than, hey, we're ABC, we're gonna put these television shows out there, and then, you know, people like it or they don't like it. This is a way where they can put it in front of people or not put it in front of people based on their decision. And because there are so many businesses that are, their lifeblood is through the platform, I think they're getting to a point now where there has to be a little more and a lot better communication as to what they expect from people, because it's going to, it's hard to say that it's going to harm Facebook in the long run because people will leave because they're almost a monopoly at this point. But it's, I think that there has to be a little more open communication, and it has to be a little clearer.
Yeah, but I think you're looking at it from your side of the table. I mean, what you're talking about is maybe 1 to 2% of the Facebook users having an issue like you're having. Like, why don't you give me more information? Facebook's not worried about STN Digital or Monster Energy or Nike or whatever and what they're trying to do from a Facebook Live perspective. They're worried about the entire pie. So if you log on to Facebook every day as your aunt and you see all these stupid countdowns that flood your feed, that your aunt may not go on Facebook anymore, and that's their main issue. They want to keep people on the platform.
Right, but it's not. But it's not for the end user's experience.
Sure,
it's specifically for Facebook.
Because if you go out, if your aunt goes on Facebook and there's 19 polls of countdowns to Donald Trump's inauguration, like, this Facebook.com's stupid.
Right.
This doesn't help me. This is not informative. This isn't engaging. I don't like any of this content.
And I do agree that in certain circumstances, like you just brought up, they could be looking at like the end user experience for that. But what I think they're looking at from that particular perspective is, in order to get these views, we want you to pay for them.
No, absolutely.
So it's not like
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, and I don't think
But
they think
it's
that,
been pay to play for the last 4 to 5 years. I mean, you can't get any engagement anymore organically.
Right, but when they do that, what they're basically saying is like, we're not going to allow this type of content that our fans actually want. We're going to turn down how well it performs and who gets to see it.
Zuckerberg literally is in the back with like a knob like that.
But I mean, essentially, they can just go and say, hey, let's tamper that down 7%. And then let's look at how it performs afterwards. So in any other organization, you would have the, you know, FCC or something having a little bit of oversight. So let's just say that for whatever.
And they've been dinged in the last year 11 times of misreporting statistics on paid advertising.
That's for the paid portion.
That's a problem, yeah.
But let's just say that in the background, coming into the next presidential election, Facebook decided we're gonna treat liberal, Democratic-leaning content more favorably, and we're gonna turn down the Republican side of things.
Possible.
And it's certainly possible that they'd be able to do that. It'd be very easy for them to be able to say, like, you know, anything, you know, look at the metrics of, you know, what the sentiment is for this particular post. If it's pro-Republican, we want to not put that in front of as many people because we feel like that was partially to blame for, you know, the end result of this last election. Now, if they were doing that, I would almost say that that would be in violation of not necessarily any.
Isn't Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post? I mean, they all have leaning agendas too.
Right, but they're the actual.
But
they're the actual channel.
Yeah, but Fox News is choosing how to report on a certain subject and what to omit from a certain subject as well.
Right, but a network, a television network, has a brand and identity. Facebook is a place where everybody puts their own content. Facebook's not a content producer. So when you go there, you're expecting to see David is talking about this and this publisher is talking about this. When you're the conglomerate overseeing
it's an
all
aggregator
of
like Drudge Report or anything else.
Yeah, so, but when you're doing that and you're allowing anybody to publish, because Huffington Post is an aggregator. It pulls what it decides it wants. That's not what Facebook is, in the same way that it's not what Twitter is. There's supposed to be a...
Well, kind of. It's almost a peer-to-peer network where user-generated content is the local news networks, and the CNN decides which stories they want to pull from it.
But CNN doesn't do that.
Sure they do.
CNN produces the content.
I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of news stories a day, and they choose what the top 10 is for their hour show.
Right, but that's the one that they're choosing. They're saying that these are going out on our network, on our platform. we're a media outlet. Facebook is not a media outlet. Facebook is a place where users put their own content, and it's just an exchange of content. So early stages, everybody put whatever they wanted out, and I think an argument which has some validity for Twitter needs a logarithm badly because it's such a fire hose. But anybody can put anything out, and it goes in your feed, and that's the exchange. The more you tailor it, the more Facebook goes from like a, hey, we're just, publishing everybody's stuff to determining what everybody sees. And it's a shift, I think, that puts them into more of a network themselves, in which case, in terms of regulation and, all those other things that television networks need to deal with.
Well, the whole Republican-Democrat thing, that's a hypothetical thing that you just brought up. But I think getting back to the point, did you have a Digiday video on this subject?
Yes, I did.
So what's this video? Does it break down essentially what you're talking about?
No, so it's actually, is it Digiday? I forget it'll say it when it comes up. But basically this is an example where somebody's saw a shift in the Facebook algorithm and then had to make shifts to try to basically hit the moving target. But if Auntie, we can bring this up. So this was a report by Buffer, but basically what I guess that was the video that sparked this in my mind. Buffer wasn't seeing a decline in reach and engagement because their viewers were like, Jesus, I'm sick of seeing all this stuff. That wasn't the case. So instead of creating content that's really great for the end user, now you're creating content.
Your argument is, how do you know what's great without posting 400 times and trying to guess what Facebook's algorithm is appreciating?
Well, I mean, but you're not even working towards what's great anymore. You're only working towards what does Facebook want.
And it's funny because Instagram, which Facebook owns, check this out, World Star Hip Hop posts 72 times a day to battle against the algorithm, because their goal is to get on the Explore tab, their goal is to get on your feed, and I follow them, but I only see like 7 posts a day, but they post 72 times. So if you go to their actual account, you'll see over the last 24 hours, just a ton of content.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. I mean, the goal back in the day was 1 to 3 posts a day on Instagram, just as little as a year ago. But once the algorithm comes into effect.
But I guess that's the one crux of the whole, to wrap this point up from my perspective is no longer as a publisher are you trying to give your followers or the people on Facebook what you think is the best content. Now you are shifting gears completely to only try to hit that shifting target of the Facebook, here's what we want you to publish.
Yeah.
And do I think that's best for the end user? No. Facebook states that that's why they're doing it, but I think that they're trying to find out what's best for Facebook and what earns them the most revenue, because that's what they
Well, I don't know if
care
you saw this TechCrunch article last week, but it said Facebook is broken was the title. Okay. And one of the lines was, at Facebook's scale, behavior targeting doesn't just reflect our behavior, it actually influences it, which you can go back to the election and everything that came out there. But if, Auntie, you want to pull up one of the tweets that was embedded within this article by Robert Cosera, and he says, the trouble with the internet, Mr. Williams says, is that it rewards extremes. Say you're driving down the road and see a car crash. Of course you look. Everyone looks. The internet interprets behavior like this to mean everyone is asking for car crashes, so it tries to supply them. So to your point, on the Facebook poll part, Facebook thinks that's a hack and they don't like that. But if you're actually going based on likes and comments and engagement, then the car crashes or the murders or the extremist views on different electoral candidates ends up being the most engaging content. So let's show people more of that, which overall entices behavior.
Yeah, but in the end, I mean, it is Facebook's platform, and they are going to say, hey, we don't want this to turn into a place that's, mostly has violence or sex or whatever else, so we're going to try and tailor that. And I understand that, but when it seems like the end goal for them, obviously, is to ramp down publishers as much as possible to make them have to pay to reach anybody.
Yeah, and they're trying to find a happy medium where if you do that too much, you totally, I guess, disrespect an entire market and people maybe pull off your platform eventually and it starts to go downhill. But if you don't do it enough, then you're not making enough ad revenue. So
yeah,
that's the game they're trying to play.
So either way, they're in a powerful position.
To wrap it up, put a bow on this. This is from Christopher Mims. People who use Facebook, the less healthy they are and less satisfied they are with their lives. To put it badly, the more times you click like, the worse you feel. So there's a lot of studies out there saying the more time you actually spend on that and engage in actually isn't as healthy as you can imagine. All right, so moving on to when to decide to shift strategy in business.
And that's
the answer is, who knows?
A question without a great answer. There's so many examples that we brought up on previous episodes where people have been too slow to shift. I think Blockbuster versus Netflix is probably like the most obvious, where Blockbuster either, I don't even know if they ever did shift, but if they ever did, it was so late that it didn't matter at all. But they were in this incredibly powerful position. They saw the writing on the wall. They saw the internet coming. They were still earning money, and that was the biggest problem. They were earning money. They were profitable. Even though Netflix was starting to send out videos, people were still coming into the brick and mortar stores. And they looked at it as like, do we give up this revenue?
And I've talked ad nauseum about the TV industry. That's the same exact conundrum they're in right now too, is they're making a lot of money with the old way of doing things, and it would cost a lot of money to essentially, sabotage your viewership for the future of digital and things like that. But to your point, like a Blockbuster just wasn't going to do that.
Yeah, and then, in some other circumstances, actually the CAA powerhouse book here, Mike Ovitz, was too early in getting into the direct-to-consumer satellite business. And basically the very early stages of what would have turned into like an early Hulu and early Netflix online. And it blew up. So they created this thing, and it essentially, in hindsight, was like, we were too early because we had all this money invested into it. It takes a lot of time and energy to do it, but people weren't ready for another 10 years. So even though they were on the right track, they were the earliest ones to get to it. They went out of business because the market wasn't ready to support that yet, and you can't spend a decade blowing money hoping that it goes well. So from my perspective, all of that is to say we see opportunities to do things right now. We talk about it all the time. This show being one of them. We have a marketing agency that is going well, and we really love our work and we really love our clients, but we enjoy doing content, and we see that content originals are going to be probably a larger piece of what we need to do later moving forward. So let's jump onto it. This has been our investment. It's an investment in our time. It's an investment in set and some of our employees here and camera equipment, what have you. But should we be, doing 5 shows a week and putting those pilots out there? At what point is it going too all in on the new thing and leaving good money on the table? I don't know.
Yeah, and I hate to keep on repeating myself on the show, but I mean, I guess the only answer is an educated guess and a gut feeling, right? I mean, how do you, unfortunately in business, entrepreneurship, you can go back to math and say 10 plus 10 equals 20, but there's never a right answer. I think if you're searching for that right answer, is it 1 show, is it 2 shows, is it 3 shows? Same with Buffer, do we post 72 times a week, post 35 times a week? Well, let's try both and see how they both work. So I think it has to be just constant experimentation. The same way with a cook is so I add a cup of, lemon juice or 2 cups of this recipe. Let's see. Let me try to cook it up and see what the end result is.
Yeah, and I think, for thus far, our comfort level has been let's try something and let's see if we can sell it. And I love that because usually that will force us into whatever new venture we're doing at the baseline is profitable immediately, which is great. Now, Amazon was not profitable for...
Twitter's still not profitable.
Right. And now Amazon, Jeff Bezos is the 5th richest guy in the world or somewhere top 5 something. And that's the type of big idea where you know that you're just going to be taking venture capital and debt.
That is, from the business coach and mentorship standpoint, I will be completely honest, and you and I have talked about this at length. That's where I tap out in terms of when you have that idea, and if you can get $100,000 from somebody to be a small percentage owner of it, for you to pour gasoline on it and go, that is the decision that I would really love to hear more feedback from people that have done it. Because I think you and I both agree there's been situations where if somebody came in on a 20% basis and gave us a ton of money, it's like we would murder it with it.
I agree.
Yeah.
And
but when do you make those decisions? You know?
Well, and I mean, I can't tell if it's just because that's where my interests lie fundamentally, and even all the way through school, it was like those types of areas. But I like being the ambassador of people's money. And I look at that, I look at that even with our clients. Like they're trusting us with all this money.
With the budget, yeah.
And I'm usually the one to say like, give us this money because we're going to take good care of it.
ROI will be in your favor. Yeah.
We're going to give you all this other stuff. And we get to keep some of the money ourselves, obviously. That's how we stay in business. But I look at it less of like, we're earning this money and more of like, we're the caretakers of your money network or team. And we're going to give you all this stuff in return. So at the end of the day, you're super happy about it. And I look at it very similarly with venture money.
Yeah.
Because everybody with venture money basically is like,
give me a percentage return, please.
Yeah. Take good care of my money.
Yep.
You need it. You have a vision. Go and do your thing, and I get a return. So the same way I look at our clients is the same way that I would look at somebody on the venture side of things to say, we're going to be an incredible ambassador of your money. We're going to do so good with it, and we're going to get you such a good return that you're going to be begging us to take more money because it's hard to find people that can take money and make money.
Yeah.
And I think we like doing that, and we've got a proven track record of doing it. So the more experience that we've got in the space, the less concerned I am because we've got such a good track record.
I think the only issue is not spreading yourself too thin, which we've heard a lot recently as well, is can LeBron James be the best basketball player on the planet? Yes. Can he also be an amazing NFL player potentially? Can he play professional baseball, professional football, and professional basketball and do everything great and not get, no, probably not. So there's always like a line for everybody. So if you start 3 or 4 different small businesses and only devote 10% of your time to each, they're all probably going to fail opposed to going all in on 1 or 2. So
I agree with that, but I look at ourselves as a lot less as a player and more like a Mark Cuban. And a Mark Cuban takes that capital and says, I want this coach and this GM, and I have the money to hire them to decide the players, and then we've got the money to hire these players, and they're going to have to do that. And I'm going to put really great people in really great positions. But every venture,
I think, at this level anyway, it's a certain amount of time you have to devote to it.
Absolutely.
So you would agree you couldn't run 9 STN Digitals right now. That'd be, I mean, sure, you could try.
One is hard.
You could try, but then you would only be able to take 1 call per week per company, and just probably wouldn't be good from a sales standpoint.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that's the one thing is with the capital, a lot of times you're able to really get people in positions and hire up front, hire in front of all this work that you're doing.
Yeah. Instead of having to hold for 3 months because you don't have the capital.
Totally. And 4 years ago, I would have been like, I'm never taking a dollar from anybody because I would look at that as debt. But in an equity position in something, everybody's got great,
but we've also
upside.
We've turned down 4 or 5 clients in a month because we weren't able to scale up enough and we had to hold on. We've done that multiple times in our company. So is that a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the hardest things that we're still trying to figure out is who to hire. We can hire in front of anything, but who do we need to hire? What skill set specifically? And that's been one of those questions.
We need 4 more Johns and 3 more aunties. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to this video, which I thought you'd like. So this is a video, John, from an audio standpoint. This is Coach K, who was, of course, the coach of the men's national basketball team, Coach LeBron and Kobe in '08. More recently, I think in the, 2016 games? No. That true? You got nothing for me? Listening?
I don't know the answer.
The Olympics? What was the Olympics? 2016, right? Anyways, this is Coach K on standards and core values with his Olympic team.
Time during one of the first practices that LeBron turned his back on you while you were talking to him. What did you do versus what everybody thought you should have done?
First of all, I don't yell as much as I did when I was a younger coach, but I never really yelled with the national team. In LeBron's case, LeBron and I have a great relationship. Well, how do we get that? We get that from being honest from the get-go. In that particular situation, it was, look at me. We need to have eye-to-eye contact. You know, in my younger days, or if it was someone said, what the hell are you doing? You know, it would be a huge confrontation. And we tried, but they're not accustomed to looking at everybody all the time. And so it actually became one of our standards. There are 14 standards that our U.S. Olympic team had. It's the way you live, the way you expect other people to live. We have no rules, but we have standards.
What are the standards?
Well, one of them, what came from that is when we talk to each other, we look each other in the eye. Another standard is we tell each other the truth. A standard that LeBron introduced to the whole team when we met was no excuses. You know, never make an excuse. That doesn't mean you don't figure out why you do it. A standard can be not being late, never having a bad practice, having each other's back, being flexible, having a strong face all the time. Remember that you're representing something bigger than you. You know, these are all things that I didn't come up with, we all came up with. And as a result, it was ours. And that's why, you know, our group got along so well together, is because it was never anybody imposing my rule on somebody. It was all of us imposing and living our standards.
So I thought that was pretty good. I think in the early on in the interview, he says, early on in my career, if a player didn't look me in the eye, I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? What the hell are you doing? And then now it was like, hey, we have these standards. We've agreed to them. Like, look me in the eye. That's what we do here. Which, what a difference, right? Like a very small tweak, but having internal standards in your head and trying to apply them and pressure people into them, opposed to here are the goals, here are the core values, here are the standards. And then if somebody's not doing them, not only can the authority figure or the owner imply them to people, but then even their colleagues can also say like, hey, you're screwing me. We don't do that around here.
Yeah, and I mean, I do like that it's, you know, different in a situation like this, but they had involvement from everybody in determining like what some of those values should be.
Yep.
Because he mentioned specifically LeBron, but I'm assuming that there were others that had things like no bad practices.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to have
and have a
somebody
strong
taking it
face.
off.
Like every time you get a call against you, don't whine and cry to the official. Act like you've been there before, type of deal.
Yeah.
But that's a team obviously that's only together for 3 months and they're playing at the Olympic level, and there are a bunch of really superstars on teams that are coming together for a short amount of time. But I think you and I have realized too in business, just having what are your core values that you want out of every person, and what standards do you want to uphold? And that just can't be floating in your and I's head, and you and I getting pissed off every time somebody shows up late. Well, what's our standard on showing up late?
Well, and I don't know if we were hard on ourselves, but we're like, why haven't we had these core values before?
Yeah.
But when we were going through the core values, we were talking about
and
individuals.
to back up, we essentially did a worksheet and a program to decide what we determine our core values to be that every employee should strive or focus on.
So just to further, I guess, solidify what the culture is and what we expect from everybody, what are those core values? But we couldn't have done it year one.
No.
It wouldn't have worked. And I think that we were thinking about people specifically, and I was like, well, what is it about this one person that I like? And it was like, it's not that they're like honest. It's not that they're this. And it was like, oh, they're friendly. Like that's the most boiled down way of saying it. And that's a trait about them that I really, really like. So just being friendly, is that a core value? And like, so before having the employees, we wouldn't have known what that was, those core values. And I guess more specific than core values, it was like what we consider a great teammate, what we consider a great employee.
Because we never have like talked about this, but I think the reason you and I have worked out so well is like we're good teammates to each other. We're not going to throw each other under the bus. We're not going to screw each other. If I say I'm going to do something, we're going to do it, and we can always count on each other. So that builds a level of trust. So you want to try to, I guess, throw that trust onto colleagues as well. So they trust each other and they trust their superiors and everything like that.
But it really, I mean, it's been, even though we didn't have, employees in on the meeting, it was really like, kind of brought out from them. It's like, what do we really love about Vanessa? What do we love about John?
What has
do we love
happened
about
naturally?
Ben?
Yeah.
Like what are those traits about them that are like their best traits that we want everybody to have more of? So it kind of felt more about, selecting from all of our great employees and determining the best in everybody.
And again, that goes to I don't know if it was a little late in our company at the 4-year mark to finally have like a set of core values, but that's something that I learned from a fellow entrepreneur and we applied. And those are the things when it comes to mentorship and business coaches and peer groups that you start to say like, that's a good idea. We should definitely do that. Should we have done it a year ago? I mean, we would have had better success with our employees, maybe not, but it sure is tough to do a quarterly review or a yearly review without any standards to go down and say, let's see if you're hitting them.
What I find funny is looking back on our opinion on certain matters at like the 1.5-year mark and 2-year marks and how those have shifted so much where, I'm trying to think of specific examples, but even like we don't want detailed contracts. We don't want to have one of those contracts that's like, you get one revision and then in 24 hours and then you get burned 90 times and you're like,
good idea.
I get it.
Yeah.
I can see why they did that. And I don't want to have to write anybody
But maybe
up.
year one you have that mentor or that person you can go to like, guys, I know you think it's lame. I know you think it's not good. Trust me. Just put it in the contract so if it ever comes up, you have something to go on to like, all right, whatever, we'll throw it in. We don't agree with you. You're an idiot, but whatever. And then it happens and you actually have a contract that states that, so you don't have to have an awkward conversation about.
But I think once you're at our size and stage, then it's really interesting for a mentor because there's enough meat on the bone. In the first couple years of most companies, unless you're really just like a rocket ship.
I don't know. I think we would have had a really solid
a mentor for sure.
A solid
Maybe not
mentor
a
in year
coach.
2. I think we would have just avoided a few, not major issues, but just even contract things like that. Like just trust me. Here's a contract boilerplate template. Keep it in there.
Yep.
It's never going to come up, but when it does, you'll have something to go back on. Like, and then we'll look at it like, oh, thank God we did that.
Or immediately upon forming the company, getting insurance.
Yeah.
That would have been nice.
Yeah. All those things. All right, so wrap it up here. Kind of a quick episode here as we have Sarah Brooks, who owns a PR company here in San Diego, will be on the show for episode 24 next week.
Okay.
Looking forward to that. But to wrap it up here on the solo show, quote of the week.
Quote of the week for me: whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. And that is Mark Twain.
Give it to me again.
Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect.
So you don't think the Warriors are going to win the championship?
They
Or
didn't,
at least
they didn't last year.
just
And
pause and
if you were
reflect.
on the side of the majority last year, had you paused and reflected?
They have a huge difference, and his name is Kevin Durant.
I agree. But overall, I think professionally and personally, it's good to kind of think in those terms. If everybody's doing one thing, is there opportunities on the other side?
And to your Blockbuster example, and I heard Ashton Kutcher say something recently, but he also passed on Uber the first round of VC money.
Cost you.
Yeah, and I think what happens is from a majority standpoint, like, well, if you ever need to get anywhere, you just call a cab. That's just how it is. It's how it always has been, how it always will be. And it doesn't allow any room for, wait a second, is this really the most efficient way to do this thing? And can we disrupt the market with a new service? So to your point, I think sometimes when you kind of get in the minutia of, well, that's how it's always been.
Yeah, well, and like an Uber or an Airbnb, which are very similar services.
And that's what he
in
said
my
too. He's
opinion.
like, nobody's ever going to open up their home and have strangers in it. Like, really?
Well,
You'd be surprised.
And I would have thought with the majority, like, that is a liability nightmare. What if the Uber guy gets
Yeah,
drunk
yeah.
and crashes?
Yeah,
what
yeah,
if, you know, somebody breaks into the home and
Or
kills
what
somebody?
if it changes the game completely?
Yeah, and so everybody felt like that, and I think Gary Vaynerchuk, he mentioned too, he passed on either Airbnb or Uber. I think it was Uber.
Uber.
In
Travis
the
is one of his
early
friends.
stages, it would have been like a $25,000 investment,
That
which
would
to
have made
him
him
was
25
really
million.
not that big of a deal. That could have been like $1 billion miss, but it was based on like, I think it's going to be like too hard, and like, what are you going to buy all the cars? And like, no, it's no cars.
But
It
again, that was the majority opinion. That's when you have to pause and reflect there. Wait a second.
totally.
You know, I like it. My quote of the week is by Tim Ferriss. A person's success in life can usually be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations he or she is willing to have. I think you've had a couple uncomfortable conversations last year or so. You got to do them.
With business people or just clients and
overall.
stuff. Yeah, I kind of enjoy going into those conversations with clients. Not that I want there to be an uncomfortable conversation, but yeah, I feel like I strive in those. Personal life, not as much. I try to avoid the uncomfortable conversations now.
I feel you. I feel you.
But yeah, great quote.
Hey, Auntie, cue the music, man, because it's episode 23. There it is. Subscribe on iTunes. We're on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook Live, the whole deal.
Yeah, and email with any questions. I think we'd love to be able to do a deep dive.
It's David at STN.digital and Brett, B-R-E-T-T, at STN.digital. As always, we appreciate it. Sarah Brooks, episode 24, happening next week.
See you then.
Thank you.